Peace, y'all. I just had a quick correction for context sake that I wanted to address before this episode starts and before y'all hear it. So about probably like a good hour into this conversation, Lupe mentions the Pitchfork review of he and Soundtrack's album Samurai, and he mentions how the first two paragraphs speak about the movie The Last Samurai, the 2003 film starring Tom Cruise. It's white savior shit, maybe worth the watch for just for context, but whatever. So the Pitchfork review in question actually references a completely different novel from 2000, also called The Last Samurai, by a writer named Helen DeWitt. It's about a completely different thing. It's about like a child prodigy who plays piano on a quest to search for his father. Um, I just wanted to issue that technical correction because I don't correct him on it proper in the interview, and like I just want to cover him. I want to cover me. Like the reason he brings it up and the point he's making is still a salient and interesting one, but I just wanted to issue that technical correction. Like the author Paul Thompson, shout out to Paul Thompson, by the way, he's amazing. That like that Paul was talking about the novel, not the movie. I just wanted to like I just wanted to give Paul his credit and his flowers and all that shit. But yeah, you know, this is like I already know a lot of people are about to be here for this one, so I just wanted to make sure that was addressed up front. And yeah, for anybody new, welcome to Real Notes. Hope y'all stay a while. Peace, y'all. Before we get started, I felt compelled to remind everyone to stay safe and stay abreast of all the atrocities happening around the world. The people of Palestine, Tigray, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, and countless other territories are currently fighting for their rights and their lives. And if you're choosing to take action, please take every precaution you can. Stay hydrated, stay in groups, cover your face, and please, more than anything, don't lose hope. I've been leaving links to organizations and resources at the bottom of every episode description for a good minute, so please go check those out for places to donate and to find ways to take action today. We're not free until all oppressed people in the States and abroad are free. Much love, stay strong, and stay dangerous. What's good, y'all? My name is Dylan Green, and this is Real Notes, a space dedicated to blurring the cultural and artistic lines between rap and film. I'm here to chop it up with everyone from rappers and producers to journalists and video directors about their relationship to movies and how, if at all, film inspires their craft. My guest this week is Chicago rapper, producer, label head, and MIT professor Lupe Fiasco. We spoke about True Detective, being inspired by his father's record and film collections, practicing martial arts and African drumming, references and concepts in his music, creating across eras, the art and pros and cons of criticism, his bond with producer Soundtrakk, and the creative process behind his years in the making latest album, the Amy Winehouse-inspired Samurai. Come fuck with us. What's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to Real Notes. It's a Monday. We're back. We're tired. Post 4th of July, all sorts of fun stuff. My name's Dylan Green, CineMasai. Got a lot of names, do a lot of shit outside, inside, all sides. Everybody I have on the show is special, but this person who's here today is extremely special. And he doesn't need an introduction, but I'm gonna give him a real brief one anyway. This man's a rapper, producer, poet, college professor, gamer, lover of green now and laters, Moroccan moles and undercover squirrels, and a lot of other stuff. But the one, the only Lupe Fiasco is here on the podcast. I can't articulate what it means that you're here. Lupe, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, nah, it means the world. There's I've been listening for like since Food and Liquor basically. So it's there's a lot I could ask, but we'll keep things pretty narrow. I'm gonna ask you the first question I ask everybody. Who comes on here, which is movie or TV that you had a strong opinion about.
The signal broke up, so you like stuttered all the way through that.
Oh, my fault. What's the last movie or TV show you watched that you had a strong opinion about?
True Detective, the last True Detective, the one where they're up in like I guess Alaska or the Arctic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's the last like series thing that I watched that I actually like was like, oh wow, that's pretty dope. But I try and watch all the True Detective series whenever I get around. Fortunately, I was on a long set of flights from out Saudi Arabia to London to the UK, and so it was on the same airline, so I was able to watch the whole series all the way through.
Right.
That was pretty dope. I like that.
And how'd you like this season? Because I haven't watched any of True Detective at all, so I got no frame of reference.
I mean, it's like Sherlock Holmes in a certain way. Like they're all under the same moniker, like True Detective. Like that's the same like title for all of them, even though each one is completely different, has different actors, different storylines and plots. They're all under True Detective. They're just really well done. I think they're really well written, really well shot. The narrative's always really tight and good, and then you it's really hard to figure it out. So you know that it's a twist. You know there's a layer to it, and it just sends you in all these different places. And by the time you get to the end, it's always satisfying. And it's one of those things. Even though once you discover the twist, they're still engaging enough. I think where they have like a replay value.
Yeah.
So you can go back and watch it again, you know, and knowing that the twist is going to happen. But then you watch it again, looking at like, oh, I didn't know that part was part of the like twist that I didn't catch it the first time. Something about it, but that's really good. You should check them out. I think they're really worth like your time.
Yeah, it's been on my list for a while. I just never like, like I'm one of those people who's got like 70, 80 recommendations that I'm always trying to watch. But I love a good anthology series. I'm trying to remember who was a part of the first season, but like either way, like it's always like been in the back of my head, but I just haven't like fully tapped in at all. So I'm a definitely do that now. So thank you.
Yeah, they're pretty dope.
Oh, that's tight. So real quick, let's run it all the way back with you. What's the first movie experience you can remember having? It could be at the theater, it could be at your cousin's house, like the first thing that comes to mind for you.
Um, I mean, I can't really like pinpoint a specific primary moment. You know, like my father kept like a big collection of film. I remember we had like a Betamax VHS player, Betamax player, VHS player. Like we always had all of the like at least my dad always had the latest and great. I even think we had Laserdisc for some reason.
My dad
Maybe
had a Laserdisc collection. I get it.
maybe not. I might be projecting. Um, but I remember just having like either the Betamax or the VHSs and watching those as like a little kid. And then we would go to the movies from time to time. I think the one movie that stood out for me was Hamburger Hill. I think it was like this Vietnam movie or something like that. It might have been Hamburger Hill. I don't know if it was Vietnam or another war. But I remember going to see that. I remember going to see Colors at the movies as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. So yeah, there's some cinematic memories back there, but that's so long ago that they're all over the place. So I don't know which came first. I don't know if I was 5. I don't know if I was 2. I don't know if I was whatever. So, but I think the most
Right.
standout one is my dad always had a ton of like films. Oh, I remember the one that probably is the most is TriStar Pictures back in the day.
Yeah.
Their opening thing before the movie came on was there was like a unicorn that would like start at the back of the screen and then come
Yeah.
up. I remember I always used to run it hot because I always thought the horse was gonna jump through the screen.
That's tight. Yeah, I had I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was done.
I had a it's funny because I had a similar experience with the Columbia lady. Like there was one there cause like for anybody who doesn't know, like kind of like the TriStar thing, it's just like this lady holding like a torch and she's standing on some steps. There was one movie, I can't remember which one, like they like she started moving and she like ripped off her dress and started it might have been like an Adam Sandler movie or something dumb like that, but like ever since that happened, I can't not watch the Columbia thing happen without thinking that like she's gonna move or like jump or something. It's like I'm less scared that she's gonna hop out and do something, and I'm just like, what are they gonna do with her this time? Like it's just kind of stuck in my head. It's always fun when companies do like weird, interesting things with their logos and their mascots and shit.
Oh yeah. I think I remember seeing something like that when she did. Either she was fighting somebody, she was beating up something with the torch. I think it was in one film.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Like she was fighting with it or something like that. Anyway. But yeah.
right. Yeah, no, something like that. And then in the Charlie's Angels movie, they like zoom all the way out to the right of like where the clouds are, and there's like the opening scene where like LL Cool J is on the plane and he's like a spy, but he's like actually Drew Barrymore in disguise. Like I don't know, like I just always remember stuff like that because it's like it's different. Not everybody does that, so that's just cool to me.
Mm.
But like as you get older and you start to have like more life experiences and like develop your own taste, what's the first like capital M movie you can remember seeing? Like I like to think of a capital M movie as something that really like affected you and like touched you in like a artistic or emotional or spiritual sense, like something that was more than just like a piece of entertainment for 90 minutes type shit.
I mean, I really can't remember, to be honest. I've had so many experiences, you that are when you try and go back and you try and piece things back together. Uh, like I said, I don't know if the TriStar Pictures things happened when I was 5, or if it happened when I was 3, if it happened when I was
Right.
11. Like things get blended and mixed together. Um, there's a ton of movies and even TV shows that have like effects on you. They may be subtle, they may be a little bit more, uh, a little bit bigger of an impact than that. Um, but I don't know. Like we used to watch a lot of like martial arts films because we did martial arts, so that was our kind of thing. So for us, it was we would always watch like a kung fu film or something like that, or some ninja movie. And because we were martial artists, um, we could actually go outside and reenact the film. Like we had the sword, the outfits, we had all the other stuff. So, if you're talking about like an immediate like thing, and that was a ton of movies. So we could do that with kickboxing movies, we could do that with, whatever. Uh, we'd go outside and basically reenact the moves or pause it and rewind it and see how they did that move and then flip it that way and do the same. We literally had, I remember Surf Ninjas. Like my dad would get he had the sword from Surf Ninjas, and then he had like the knife from the Shadow. So I don't know if you remember the Shadow dude was able to control like this knife, which is
Yeah.
like the almost like Balinese or like Southeast Asian type style knife, but it was like alive and it was like he could use his mind to send it and kill people, whatever. But I mean, we had that knife, so you like watch the movie, and then like, a few months later, that knife is like sitting like on the kitchen table or the dining room table or something like that, whatever. So we literally kind of had like this one-to-one relationship with film because so much of the film was stuff that we used to do or stuff that was part of our like
Mhm.
martial heritage. So we watch a movie about drunken boxing and then go like outside and do drunken boxing, you know. So
Yeah.
probably those are probably the ones that are most prescient upon me was like the martial arts films.
Wow. I mean, like I knew you were I knew you and your father were close in that way, but not necessarily like with the film connection's really cool, especially when it comes to stuff that you like do in real life, especially martial arts. Like something that's like so philosophically and physically like in tune with your body and like kind of having that be one of one is really, really dope. Um yeah, that's just cool as hell. That's not what I was expecting to hear, so that's just dope.
Mm.
Yeah. So before we move on to more like specific music things, was there ever a period? Well, actually no, you already answered that question, so I'm not going to ask that again. But when did, like in a similar fashion, like when did music become kind of like capital M music for you, like a thing that went from, like, was there ever a time where it was just a thing that was like passive in the background, and like a time to a time when you just were like, this is music, this is a thing that, like, I'm not even so much like you want to make it, but just like you're interested in it and fascinated by it?
I mean, yeah, the first thing my dad, there's two things my dad gave me when I was a child, when I was like a baby, like 2, 3 years old, maybe 3 years old. He gave me a short wakizashi,
Yeah.
which is uh, katana sword, but a short one called a shoto. Um, and he gave me a little djembe drum, a little African djembe drum that matched his. So it's
Yeah.
like he had a big djembe, I had a little djembe. He had the daito, which is a long sword, and I had the shoto, which was a short sword. So music has always been a part of my uh, existence in one way or another. My dad was a musician, had a lot of instruments around the house, played a lot of instruments. So music was always a part of our experience. We'd always go to the lake and drum. He had like a drum circle, and it'd be different people with different types of instruments and dancers, and all these people come up. And so that was a part of my life since I could remember. Um, and again, one of the first two things my dad gave me was a drum and a sword. So music has always been in that space, uh, like always. So it's like I was always listening to music. He had a big record collection. So I remember listening to like records, classical music, and stuff like that. Um, and I don't know. I remember even in our martial arts demonstrations, there's like demonstrations where you would hear like this soundtrack. Like, so you would just come watch us, perform, doing the karate demonstration, the martial arts demonstration. And then there would always be like a soundtrack, like in the background. And you would think like, oh, they're playing like music. Like there's a CD or like a tape or whatever playing. And then at the end of the demonstration, that we would bring out the band. And so behind the scenes, it was like we had like a drum corps, where my dad would teach kids to make their own drums, and they had these like kettle drums and coal drums and all these different things. And behind the scenes, it would be the band was playing the whole time. So music was always a part of the martial arts tradition for us, and then in the cultural tradition as well. So was it a professional pursuit? I mean, I don't know. Like I wouldn't say that deeply, but there's when you just part of your life, there's no difference. It's like, oh, that's just what we do. This is a part of our thing. And all my sisters are like dancers, so it's like we
Right.
always dance and do that stuff. They used to dance. Um, and then it kind of turned a corner in high school where it's like I wanted to play jazz, and wanted to play the clarinet, and my dad had a clarinet amongst a bunch of other instruments. So it was like I want to play the clarinet. So I remember started playing like the recorder, and then the Japanese sakuchi flute. Um, and then was like, oh, let me step up and play the clarinet. My sister used to play the flute too. My older sister played the flute back in
Mhm.
the day. But yeah, I went to play the clarinet, went to high school. It was like we can't teach you how to play. You got to go to music school. And so I was like, oh fuck, I'm not doing that. So I was like, all right, let me just start rapping. So I started rapping to replace the jazz piece.
Right.
And then about like I was like 14 because I was freshman year, and then by junior year it was like, oh, I'm gonna be a rapper. Like that's gonna be my job. Professionally. I didn't go to college, didn't prepare to go to college. I was like, I'm just rap. I got my record deal when I was like 1 foot in high school, 1 foot out, and then like
Yeah.
from I would say from 18, maybe night. I call it 19 because it's just easy. 19 years old is when I got professionally into the music business.
All right. Before we move a little further into that, I also grew up playing djembe. Not from a super young age. I started playing in high school. My high school had an African drum. I'm a West African drum club, and I joined it. And I still have my djembe in my closet. So yeah, like that's yeah. Now like djembe and dun dun were always my two favorite drums to play
Mm.
whenever we were in the Corps. I
Mm.
never owned a Dune before, but like, just I don't know. Like I also grew up playing instruments, so like, but like I had never encountered like West African anything instrument related until I was in high school, and
Mm.
I think that was I really do feel like that's enriched my life in a lot of ways. I always tell myself like I'm gonna take the djembe out the closet, I'm gonna restring it, I'm gonna get new skin, I'm gonna start playing again, and it never happens. So I'm trying to really like get myself I'm trying to get myself back on that path. So I had no idea that you did anything you just said. So that's really beautiful for me to hear, just as somebody who like did that as well and thinks about it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't
Yeah.
know a lot of stuff. I've been saying this stuff for years. I always tell me like, well, why do you do what you do? My dad did da 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 da. And it's like it just
Yeah.
either people don't pay attention or it just like goes over their head and it's like, all right, fuck it. All right, cool. This is all
Yeah.
of these rap. But yeah, my dad used to make drums from scratch. So he used to do the carvings, um, or he used to get like the whenever kettle drums, he would get like the uh the metal drums, the barrels or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
drill them, string them. He used to get the skins. I remember our bathtub. Used to in the bathtub, you would go in there, it'd be like skins soaking in the bathtub to make them pliable and loose and stuff like that. And he would cut them into
Yeah.
circles and string and do everything. So yeah, my dad was like, you know, all the way there. Like if you see my dad, he would be like, "Oh shit, he probably made all that. He made the sword, made the drum, made the dope." So it's pretty dope.
Yeah. I mean, like like just hearing all of that, like there's like, like that type of discipline and like dedication to craft, it just like it sticks with you for life, like no matter what you do, like that could be like a creative pursuit, like whatever. It's just yeah, it's just really fulfilling. And I just love to hear that. I think it's great. Um before we move on to other music stuff and the new project, you had mentioned yeah, like you had mentioned earlier that you were already kind of like one foot in and one foot out while you were in high school. And you mentioned like that was around the time when you really started to take it seriously. um but like was there like a more like sorry to get back into specifics, but like, was there like, do you remember like the first moment when you like specifically knew like rap was going to become more than just a hobby for you, where it was like this moment is like I am going to rap, period.
Yeah, one of my homeboys I used to rap with named Bishop G. Went to high school
Mm-hmm.
together. I built a little
Sir.
studio, and I remember we were doing some freestyle. I can't remember what it was. We rapping over something, and we listening back to it. And he was like, "Yo," he listened to his verse. Had another homie, Doughboy, another homie. I don't remember. I don't even remember who's on the song, Doughboy, Napo. But anyway, it got to my verse, and he was like, "Yo," he's like, "You sound like you do this for real." He's like, "Yo, you sound like you do this like this on the radio." And then he was like, "We rap," and everybody was dope. He's like, "We rap, and we sound like we sound." But he was like, "When your shit come on, it sound like you can. It sound like you do this for real." And then that was kind of like one of the things where it was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Then I'm gonna do this for real." Even though I probably made the decision to dig in way before then, that moment was kind of like, "Oh shit!" Like even the homies are like, "Yeah, you could do this like for real," and that kind of boosts your confidence or like uh, solidifies the writings on the wall to like, oh yeah, you could you apply yourself, you can kind of like your tone's already there, your skill set is kind of there,
Right.
like maybe you can pursue it. So that was probably that was the moment, the pivotal moment that I kind of come back to.
Right. That makes sense. Cause yeah, like right before this, I went back and listened to Armpits, the Pack song, and just like your verse on Armpits is just ridiculous. Like it was like you said, it's just there. Like you were just like ready to roll. And just like even going through like the early singles and everything, like like you just like your eye, your eye, your ear, and your tone and your writing were already so sharp. And it's just like all we got to do is just just refine this and move it forward. Just yeah, that's dope. That's super dope. So before we dig into albums specifically, I wanted to touch on another specific song. You know, since this is like a rap and movie podcast, I couldn't not bring up Double Burger with Cheese, from Friend of the People, because like what a song, man. Just like, for anybody who doesn't know, Double Burger with Cheese is a song from a while back where Lupe ties together a bunch of different references to movies: Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, Paid in Full, South Central, Colors, you know, like you mentioned before. You know, just like as a way to draw like just generational divides between like these movies that raised so many, you know, like so many of us, you know. And like I was just curious like about where the idea for Double Burger with Cheese came from, and like why you felt the need to dedicate a whole song to it. Like it spoke to me. I love that song. So
Thank you. A lot of my work has a lot of reference in it, referencing film and TV and cartoons and stuff like that. So that part of my creative process is kind of baked in. I guess Double Burger with Cheese would be just more like, oh, I'm gonna just do nothing but those movie references from a very specific canon of films. Simply because those are the films that were, you know, watched a lot when you're a kid. In addition to all the kung fu movies, we still grew up in the hood. You know, we're still gang banging, drug dealing, and shooting and shit. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, this is part of my milieu too. And those films were able to capture so much of the reality, and you know, some of the shit was hyperbolic in certain capacities, and very very much West Coast, a West Coast bias in certain ways. So it's interesting to get like East Coast versions of it, like Juice, and or like not Once Upon a Time in Brooklyn, Once Upon a Time in Red Hook, something like that. Make It Out of Red Hook, whichever one that, I forgot what it was. But we had something similar too. We had a TV show in Chicago called The Awakenings, which was this like public access channel, almost like low key cable, but it wasn't cable. I feel it was like just public access, but it was like something that was produced by a church to kind of be one of those like dare to keep it, get off drugs type joints. But it turned out to be like super hood. It was pretty cool. So I mean, you're surrounded by that type of material in that canon, and you're gonna draw from it. It's gonna pull on you and project into you certain things, and so you got, again, I'm always pulling reference points from films, and that particular case was like, oh, let me just concentrate all the reference points specifically from this genre of films, kind of new age blaxploitation to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Kind of embed that into that one particular song. There's another record that's, I think, done a little bit more subtly, with a little bit more nuance and more of appreciation for one of like my favorite films of all time. Like there's a couple, and they're both black, kind of those Black Hood films, and that's Fresh and Deep Cover. So they're a little bit more. They're a lot more sophisticated than say like Boys in the Hood or like Menace to Society or Juice. And I did a whole song about Deep Cover on Tetsuan Youth called Body of Work. And so it touches on different things, pulls from different energies, but the main energy is Deep Cover. And real was able to hang. Bill Duke was the director. Bill Duke's a real good friend of mine. Real good guy. Was able to kind of vibe with him in different capacities. But I think that some of those movies, some of those films have a very high cinematic quality and capacity to them that rivals some Scorsese and some even higher art kind of films, if you allow it to. And really see it. So like, yeah, they're inspirations. And, I make songs about them sometimes.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy you brought up Body of Work in particular, because I remember the first time I listened to it, like on the project, and I was like, is this Deep Cover? And then it just like, yeah, just like the thing that, like, one of the things I've always loved about your writing is like you're like obviously a great storyteller, but like the thing that makes you a great storyteller is how you're just very good at embodying other people. Like you're really good at like getting at other perspectives who aren't like, you're just good at telling stories through characters. Like there's so many examples I could pull from here, but you know, like stuff like Alan and Jean Le Forever from Jorgus Wave, and you know, like He Say She Say from Food and Liquor, and you know, just like there's like you know, you're capable of doing things like that, but you're also capable of making a song like Go Watch, you know, where you can just kind of like flex for a second and then be like, you know, like this stuff's cool, but like, you know, this shit in me, not on me type shit. Like that's like, you know, like I was re-listening to Go Watch on the way into work today, and just like, you know, the way you're just like really good at getting a point of view across, like whether it's your point of view or somebody else's point of view, and like putting yourself in other people's shoes, and you know, like therefore like we're in those shoes with you. Just as like a general question, how do you know, like when you're writing, how does the like how do concepts like this tend to come to your head? Because it's like it's also observational, but like I've always been curious about like how you go about like writing songs like these, because it's everything feels so lived in, you know.
I mean, it's a non-proprietary way to look at this. I don't know. I mean, because there's so many different, there's eras where I'm writing across certain. So like Samurai, for example, is like 4 years old. So Samurai is not now. You know, the only real time project that you probably got from me was D-Miz, Drill Music in Zion,
Yeah.
and that was only because it was placed within 3 days, right? Um, and so you get like everything that was in my milieu within that 3 days. Versus like Samurai, which is years, um, Food and Liquor, which is years and years and years. The Cool, not so much, maybe a couple years in between Food and Liquor and well, from Food and Liquor until it released in like '08 or whatever. Then you get like Drogas Wave, Touch on You, which these are like years in between. So the thought processes and the things that were happening, the real time kind of reference pointing, the 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 just kind of imagining things and then also kind of pulling from history. Like it's all of those things kind of combined. Um, so the process, you know, it runs a spectrum of different approaches. You know, it's not like one singular approach for one singular song. So you might get a song where the first verse was written and recorded, you know, 10 months before the second verse got done, you know. And then if someone have the first 8 bars that sat for 4 years, and then you might get a scratch chorus, and then it won't all get put together until 2 months before the album comes out or something like that. So it is the workflow is open, and I think that's probably the secret sauce, is that my workflow is very, very fluid.
Yeah.
And you know, it yields the things that it yields when you operate in that kind of fluid space, but it's built on, with that said, like decades of practice,
Yeah.
decades of kind of internalizing how to approach a subject matter, how to flip it, you know. And then there's a certain aging process that occurs, like wine, where it's like, oh, this
Mm-hmm.
is wine, it needs to sit, you know, or this concept needs to sit. um and sometimes they sit, you know. So Skulls is like 15 years in the making, you know, and it's still just kind of sitting, you know, until it's appropriate for it to kind of be uncorked, I guess.
Right. I love that. And you know, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you saying that in the perspective, like in the perspective of rap music, because I don't necessarily know that enough people feel that way about it, you know, just like as a, you know, like that this can be a thing that's like, you know, like that's kind of like what I feel like that perspective is kind of at the core of Samurai. Just like, this is fine art, you know, like I am making art here, you know, like rap is artful, you know. Like that's one of the points being made here. There's several, but like that's one, like on repeat listens, like that's the one that's really been getting at me, is like this is a thing that like this is a practice. This is a thing that can grow and mature and be refined, like you said, like wine. And like when it's ready to go, it's ready to go. Like on top of the Amy Winehouse battle rap concept, which, like, since we're here, you said that, or not, you said, like, it's from the documentary. It's from a bit where she leaves a voicemail for Salam Remy and mentions that. So like, I'm not like, I want to know like how did you feel about the Amy Winehouse documentary? Because it's really powerful. Like, I mean, Amy Winehouse's story is so rough, and like the industry and the public and just everything did her so dirty in a lot of ways. But like, when you first watched the documentary, like, how did you feel about it and how did it affect you?
I mean, I made an album about it.
Yeah.
So I think that answers that without getting into the nits and the grits, of it all.
Yeah. No, I think so. And it's funny because at first I didn't, like, it took me a second to realize, because like when I first heard what the concept was, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, or not kind of interesting. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, it's really cool. And then I was trying to parcel like how the samurai concept fit into there, but I also realized that she kind of like called herself like a battle rap samurai, and I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. And that just, like, once again, just, I never, just like one of those things where it's not even like a why didn't I think of that. It's just like only somebody that dedicated to the craft and that willing to go that deep into their own head would be willing to pull something out like this. And it's like, this is a really breezy, cool listen. Like, it's your shortest project by a pretty wide margin, and it just, like, it
Well,
feels
no,
really nice.
no,
I'm sorry.
house is short.
Oh
House,
yeah, of
house,
course, because
yeah, house is shorter.
yeah,
But
definitely.
yes, the second shortest. The second shortest, like album EP release. Yeah.
Right.
Yo, my fault. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to shout out the all-new Real Notes Patreon page real quick. If you're looking for ways to connect and directly support the podcast, the Real Notes Patreon is the best way to do so. For as little as $5 a month, you can gain early, day-before access to every forthcoming episode of Real Notes, as well as an invite to the Real Notes Discord server, where you can talk to others about the latest and greatest in movies and music, come through for some listening sessions, and talk about whatever else is on your mind. I know I'm going to be talking a bunch. If you feel like coming up off a little bit more, you could get cool exclusive content, like audio from Real Notes Live and Real Talk interviews. Those will be exclusive to patrons and ticket holders moving forward. Access to retro versions of my 60-second Minute Maid movie reviews, and even a monthly writing and podcasting workshop hosted by me. Regular episodes will still be available on a weekly basis anywhere you get your podcasts, but if you want the extras, you gotta come out them pockets a bit. Check us out at patreon.com/realnotes. That's REELNOTES. I appreciate your consideration and support more than you know. Now let's get back to talking.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Shout out to Kaylin Ellis. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my fault on that. But
No,
there's a couple songs that I'd like to focus on specifically, and the first being the opening song, Samurai. Like, this is like, like, going back and looking it over again, this is very much like this is kind of like the most literal personification of like Amy Winehouse. Like, you're kind of like describing her looks, and the whole second verse is like, just like, walk me, like, why did it feel, well, I mean, I like, maybe I can kind of like feel out why it felt appropriate to start out the album with a song like this, but like, why was this the song to open the album for you?
Well, it was the first. Well, two caveats. First, I didn't sequence the album.
Right.
My album, so this could have very much been the last song. on the album.
Right.
Two, so that's one piece, right?
Yeah.
This the other one is like, oh, it's because it was the first song that I recorded, so it was like there was no like chronology to it, and it was never kind of meant. I won't say never because I can't put myself completely back in that time period, but it wasn't like this is going to be a full album, right? It was like, oh, that's a dope statement that inspires a record. Let me paint a portrait of Amy Winehouse, and that's what it is. It's a portrait. They're all, gotten to portraiture over the past like maybe decade,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like one of the spearhead things that I teach in my class at MIT is like this thing of rap portraiture and rap. What does that look like? What are the standards? How's as a pursuit? How do we put things into a portrait format? In an audio space. So there's some rules and regulations that were actually kind of like implemented in Samurai that we had to kind of remove for intellectual property reasons and sample clearances and stuff like that. But there's a certain rule set that at least I kind of impose on my students for what needs to be within a portrait of a person. But beyond those kind of standards, it's open and free to kind of take it where you want to take it, as long as you can kind of listen to the record and see the person, or listen to the record or feel something about the person, even if you expose what the conceit is. That's the thing. But anyway, all that does to get out of that technical kind of piece, it started just like a singular thing. Like, here's a singular song about this particular thing inspired by a statement that this person said, and here's the thing, and that's that. And then it went from like, oh, similar to kind of Kick Push. Kick Push was really just the beat, and it was meant to be like, I'm gonna give this beat to these skateboarders so they can put it on their skate DVD. Sounds like a dope beat, or at least put on a skate DVD underneath like them skating. Like, it's like a dope breezy soundtrack to that. And then it was like, oh, I got this chorus, kick, push, kick. Okay, let me put that on there, because then it'll just be like this chorus piece that just kind of comes up to add another kind of layer to it. And I remember recording the chorus and then like driving. And then as I'm driving to go get some food, listening to the chorus and the beat, it was like, oh, I got this verse. I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna lay this one verse, which talks about skateboarders, and then talks about this guy who's a skateboarder or whatever. And then then it's like, oh, now I got a second verse. And then, oh shit, I might as well finish it because I got a third verse. And it's like, oh, here's the whole. I might as well keep that song from my album because it's such a dope song. It's like that, very organic. And that's how this project was. It was like, oh, I got this song, but yo, how did she get her battle rap powers? Oh, I guess we gotta do another song. Then it's like, oh, then what happens after she won the battle? Oh, guess I gotta do another song. And then like, oh, what happens? So it kind of just grew over time. And Samurai being the first record was kind of natural because it's like the introduction, and then everything kind of builds from that. But like I said, I didn't sequence the record, so it could have been like I had input on sequencing it, but it was like, sequencing goes into like how it flows acoustically, music, different things, kind of, sometimes the narrative can get disjointed for the sake of the total body of work sonically.
Right.
That's why you can do it in a repeat way. But the luck would have it, Samurai could have been in the middle. It could have landed somewhere at the end. There's definitely records that are out of place. If I had to think of it chronologically, it was like, oh, I did that when I did that. And that's so weird.
That's tight. Yeah, because I know, also, shout out to Chill. I'm really happy. I'm really happy he's home, and that like y'all are like working close together again, and like really pushing First and 15th to the greatest power you can. I know you've mentioned in other interviews that you that there isn't necessarily like a one-to-one beginning, middle, end narrative to this album, and it's just kind of like flashes and pieces of this concept, which I think is also really dope. And like one of the you were just
it's not finished, so it won't be finished. So I'm not saying that, oh, it's not finished, wait for it. I'm not gassing you to hold you up for the next one. It's never gonna be. I'm not going back to it. But it wasn't finished, so it was like, Chill comes home, play him the kind of different seeds for projects that I have, play him Samurai. He's like, oh yeah, let's rock with this. So it's like, all right, let me get together the records that are done, and then the records that are kind of like need a verse, need to add a, flesh out a chorus, change the beat up, do that. And then it was kind of like, oh, I need to do like, you sit back and you look at those records, you're like, oh, I need to do like not eight. I need to do like maybe 4 more records to kind of finish this out. And it was this other record that I kind of had sitting over here. That was the thing. And it was, this one was like a seed of another record. And then it was like, nah. She was like, nah. We done. And not even out of a sense of like expediency, like, yo, I want to put this out by a certain date. It was more just like, no, I think this is optimal, And for me, it was kind of like, all right, cool. I'll move on, off to the next. So the reason that it has that kind of, unlike the Cool, which was quote unquote finished, but it was like the Cool was like, it's only like 4 or 5 records that are directly talking about the concept, and everything else is like Superstar and all stuff. This one was like purely meant to be this step-by-step piece about, Amy Winehouse being a battle rapper. But it didn't get finished. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. The EP. Like it's you make the decision between like completing the storyline and potentially getting like a bloated kind of very linear album.
Yeah.
Or cutting stopping at a certain point where you have a somewhat abstract, disjointed piece, but you have a really, really solid, powerful album. And so it's kind of like, yo, stop while you're ahead. We're done. And I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, I think that was I think that was a great choice, because like I really do think this is such a solid album, and like it works, like a lot of your music, it works on so many different levels, like even just like taking a look at songs like like 2 of my other favorites on here are Palaces and Bigfoot. Like Bigfoot to me almost feels like Bigfoot feels to me like a more detailed, or at least maybe or even like the inverse of a song like Superstar, for example, since you mentioned it. Like Superstar, the third verse is you kind of like describing like the perfect idyllic show. Like things are getting autographed, the crowd eventually comes up on stage and is singing with you, and like it's this like beautiful moment, right? And then like Bigfoot is just kind of you digging into like the minutia of like what a show entails, and like how it can go wrong if you're not careful. And like it's really it's tight to me to see you kind of dealing with or like not dealing with, but like exploring something like that from a different side, like not necessarily the most positive side, because like we all know like the music industry is fucking crazy. People get ripped off, dreams are distorted, and people get a lot of people get left for dead in a lot of cases. But like you're at this point in your career where you've built, you have your own infrastructure, you're independent. You're working with people like Chill and Soundtrakk, who you've been working with for years. Like once again, Chill's home, and like like the gang's back together, type shit. And it's dope to me to see you and Soundtrakk in particular come together for D-Miz and this, and like really lock in on a full project together. Like I would say, to me, like this project feels so focused. Like Samurai, like even if it's unfinished in whatever form, like it feels so focused. Like it's just like it's real. Like the 2 of y'all were just very, very locked in, and it feels great to see you explore that relationship across like 2 full projects. So I guess just because I've once again always been curious, like why was D-Miz and Now the time for the 2 of y'all to really make full length projects together, as opposed to kind of like working a little more carte blanche?
Who, me and Track?
Yeah, you and Track.
I mean, me and Track are, for one, he's First and 15's like sole producer. And the projects before that were always like these mishmash of like things that the label would send, and different people that would send beat tapes and stuff like that, and you just kind of got like this assortment of things. And that's cool because you get different points of view and you get the beats from the top producers, but then it always kind of falls a little bit flat. for expectation reasons, for just random. And I just got was like, you know, it becomes like you get spoiled for choice, and then you got to deal with all of the. You figure out that one beat that you had actually was produced by 6 motherfuckers, and then you got to deal with 6 different. It's like fuck this.
Yeah,
So
bro.
the track is he's the home team. We've already kind of proven ourselves, and that was another thing. Like we had already proven. It's like, why do y'all keep sending me all these beat tapes from all these dudes when Soundtrakk can do everything? You know, so you had a little bit of that kind of like people disparaging Soundtrakk, and even the fans, like fans would disparage Soundtrakk. I'm like, yo, you need better beats, you need this, you need that. And it's kind of like, yo, you saying this while you listening to all the records that you mentioned are produced by Soundtrakk. You know, Kick Push the soundtrack, Paris Tokyo soundtrack, Superstar soundtrack. Like we can go down the line of like things that are all the SLRs are soundtrack, all these other, like all those kind of pivotal moments. And so I think sometimes it's cool because we're the underdogs, you know, but we're the underdogs with like plaques and like big hit records, but also those cultural hit records. And so I had
Right.
to like fuck it, like fuck what the fans is talking about, you know, because if it was up to y'all, I'd be doing whole albums with fucking Alchemist and the whole album with fucking Hit Boy and the whole and all this other shit. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, cool, no disparage, but it's like, you know, to me, Soundtrack better than all them dudes. You know, like to me, for what
Yeah.
I, you know, where he takes me, how he challenges me, and then just the breadth of his creative possibilities across every format. And even if we just did an interview with Rolling Stone, it was kind of Soundtrack interview in like forever. Um, and he every time he mentions, you know, they go track for track, and every time they come up, you know, do say Samurai or mumble rap or cake, the first thing Soundtrack does is he pulls like, oh, that was me trying to be like RZA. He's like, oh, that's me studying Kanye, or like, oh, that's me studying whoever. That's me studying this person. That Q-Tip is me. So he's a student of the craft, like me, you know. So I'm like, oh, that's Homeboy Sandman. That's me doing Aesop. To your point where you said I'm always emulating. Oh, that's me doing my Fabulous. Oh, that's me pulling something from Jay-Z. That's me pulling something from whoever the fuck, right? Um, but there's a certain level of like appreciation as student of the craft, but then also taking those elements and combining them in our own way to create like really powerful, dope ass music, and dope ass moments. So that's like one play. Like I think Soundtrack's like he's going when it's all said and done, he's gonna go down as one of these top producers ever. Uh, and I think his track record, even tiny compared to other people, is super powerful. And you could send, we can go top 5 for 5, and he'll definitely be, you know, hitting people in the fucking face with stuff he's done. And he's not done. And one of the things was like, oh, when you ask like, well, why are you a Soundtrack kind of picking this time to lock out? I got whole projects with Soundtrack.
Yeah, I figured. I figured.
Shits with Soundtrack of just like, yep, this one, then we're gonna do this one, we're gonna do this one. And you know, on the outside looking in, it may seem like very sparse and sporadic, but on this side of the fence, I got like 4 folders of just tons of Soundtrack shit, in various genres from years. Like I think Soundtrack said that most of Samurai's from like 20, I think he said between 2013 and 2016, the
Yeah.
year, right? So it's old. It's like older Soundtrack stuff from an old region. He might have got he might have a particular piece of equipment that he bought, and he just made 100 beats just on that particular piece of equipment. And you'll know because
Yeah.
he'll write it in the description, like this is from the virus, whatever track, blah blah blah. With all that said, there is another team of folks that are around us, so like the Buchanans are family, so they did Mural and some other shit. Like so, there's other people in the squad, but Soundtrack is closest to me, and you know, during the pandemic, he almost died. You know, that was one of the other kind of pushes of like, let's really create this shit and put it out. Like,
Right.
create it and put it out. Right. It's one thing to just sit and ruminate on it and process the ideas, but let's create this shit and then also do all of the work that it takes to put all this shit out to the world to get it. Because he almost died, you know, and it was kind of like, man, fuck this, like YOLO, like let's go, like fuck these dudes talking about, fuck these fans talking about, fuck these critics talking about, like nigga, you hot to me, let's roll. You know, we make great pop because motherfuckers want to talk whatever they want to talk. But you get me and you in the studio, it's over with. I don't give a fuck who you go get. Like we finna go record for record, pound for pound. And I think that lit a fire in him to a certain degree, lit a fire in me. To just like not want to live with regrets. You know, I want to make sure that every beat he sent me, I want to put a song to. You know, that's kind of like the ambition. So that when
Yeah.
and he passed away, and y'all open up the time capsule and shit, he's like, oh, these dudes had 1,000 fucking records. You know, and every single one of them is its own little world and its own little piece of greatness. So anyway, that's kind of that. Not to belabor the point too much, but
Yeah, yeah.
technically he's a part of the team. He's first and 15's main producer. Um, and you know, I think he's proven himself and earned his spot to be that god. And every time he sends me something, you know, there's something in that package where you'll get a Palaces, you know, you'll get a Kick Push, you'll get some shit that's just like it's worth going through 50 beats to get to that one joint. Whereas other producers, you might not ever get that magic. You might get the dope beats and the ill fucking, you know, sample flip and this, that, and the third, but you're not gonna get that cultural impact record that touches the soul type shit. You're gonna get some, you might get some dope to dance to, some dope to sell a few records off of. But I think, you know, records like Kick Push, um, records like Palaces, and then more shit we got coming down the pipe is it's a different kind of feel that I only get from him, you know.
Yeah. And yeah, nah, like that goes, you know, that goes back to all the home team stuff y'all were talking about, and like that's like your man's. So like you guys, like y'all, you know, like that wouldn't just come from nowhere, like if y'all weren't already kind of tapped in on that level. And before I forget, because since you mentioned the Rolling Stone interview, my man Andre G did that. Shout out to Andre. That was, yeah, great conversation. Love to see that. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to hear you still consistently give, you know, track his flowers, because yeah, like even just coming up, like listening on my own, like when I would start digging through all the, you know, like liner notes and looking at credits, like all, you know, like most if not all of my favorite beats of yours were Soundtrakk beats, you know. Like it's you know, it's there was never a time when I had to reconcile that when it came to like the beats that you were rapping over that were his. I had the opportunity to do the liners for the Vinyl Me Please reissue of Food and Liquor last year, and like putting all of that together and like looking over everything, and like just kind of going over the beginning of your career at that point, and seeing where it all came, and kind of just like running through the whole discography just to refamiliarize myself. I was like, you know, like every time I would notice a Soundtrakk beat, I'd be like, oh, like yeah, like of course that's a Soundtrakk beat, you know. And just even across these two projects, you know, like you go to like you said, you mentioned his range before. Like there's, you know, like even just looking at stuff like Gotti, or you know, like Gotti doesn't sound like Kiosk, and Kiosk doesn't sound like Naomi, and Naomi doesn't sound like on Phonem, you know, like all these, like, and then and like that's not even getting to the that's not even getting back to the Samurai stuff, you know, like you said, like he pushes you, and you guys meet each other halfway, and it sounds dope. And it's just like, and it makes sense to me that y'all have, you know, like several other projects in the tuck, because like it sounds like you've been at work. You know, it doesn't just sound like it happened one day and it was like, oh, let's do it. It's, you know, it's finally time type shit. Like it sounds like you've been at work, and it sounds like you've kind of been, you know, feeling each other out a little bit more just to make it smooth. And it just it's great to like see y'all really locked in. And like I said, I've rinsed this album several times, and it's like I said, you like you both sound so focused and sharp, and it just makes me happy to see you at this point in your career, like I was saying before, just like, you know, like as sharp as ever on the pen, you know, like technically, like narratively, tonally, you know, like you're like, you know, like you've always been melodic, but like there's a lot of melody on here, like you're really playing with hooks a little more.
But
And
the caveat is two for that, not to cut you off, but like
yeah,
one
yeah,
one is like Soundtrack can carry an album. I think that's part of
yeah,
the technical part of this is like Soundtrack is a producer that can carry an album. And there's artists who just make a bunch of beats and put them on an album. That don't mean that the album is carried. It just means that you use one motherfucker to make all the beats. Versus like a producer, Soundtrakk can produce an album, an entire body of work, and it'd be cohesive and fluid, even if it's unfinished. I think the other part is like, again, all that's old. So this isn't like,
right.
There's only like a couple new verses on on Samurai. This shit's old. So you gotta think like, oh, we've been doing this. Like we've been doing this. The fear is like, oh shit, that album was 4 years old. Now, where you are now, oh shit, you might be whack now. So it might be like my prime was 4 years ago. I don't think that's the case because just recording ever since. But like, you gotta look at it. You kind of look at it like that too. So it's for again, on the outside looking in, it seems like, oh, this is fresh and new, and you're at a certain peak, and you guys are at a certain thing. And it's like, yo, these are Soundtrakk beats that are 10 years old.
Right.
Maybe more. I think one he said was from 2013. And that there's, the verses are from the beginning of the pandemic. And the concept, I think Amy Winehouse documentary came out in like 2015 or something like that.
2015, yeah, it did.
These are like, oh, we're talking about the past. Like you're not even getting the work of me processing and even Soundtrakk processing right now. I think the stuff that is gonna be, and I think that's why I'm irrelevant, is because the timing for these things is kind of like to make it relative to your podcast. It is on like a movie scale. Like you're seeing movies that have been shot for 4 years,
right?
That have been in some level of embargo or something like that, or have been re-edited multiple times because they're so old. But you'll see an actor and it's like, oh, they're in their prime and they're walking the red carpet and they're just thinking like, yo, this shit came out. I remember watching the first
Real.
in like 2018 or something like that, but it's kind of just getting released or something. So, I just want to caveat it with those things too. These is, as much as I appreciate, people like, oh, you're in your zone now, and it's kind of like, this was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I hear it, and like, but I don't know, like to me, like you mentioned, like you said the word irrelevant, but to me, like this, like to me, that's almost like a testament to like how timeless, like what you're doing is. Like this is stuff that, because I even think about it in the context of like when niggas first heard about the Amy Winehouse like concept, like the way that caused everything to just stop, and people were like, what the fuck? Like, like I was even just telling my coworkers this just now. Like I explained the concept and every single one of them looked up from their computers like, what? Like it was like it stopped everybody in their tracks, and it was like, okay, I need to like lock in and figure out like what this means. Like, what do you mean this is an Amy Winehouse concept? Like people like obviously like the surface level, like the fuck are you talking about type shit. But like then you like sit down and you listen, and this stuff that's like 3, 4, 5 back to 10, 11 years old is like catching people off guard and making people want to sit down and be like, what do you mean Amy Winehouse wanted to be a samurai battle rapper? Like, like it's like, that's not everybody can do stuff like that. Like not everybody's capable of like capturing attention in that way. And like, I love that you related it to like the process of like movie making, because there are plenty of people who make movies and plenty of people who make albums, as we all know, that take years and years and years, and the shits are ass, like straight up. Like there's no like debate. It just happens, and it just, like that's like X amount of X millions of dollars, X hours of, like time and energy and sweat, trash. Like, and this is,
Right.
Like this isn't that. At least it isn't to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. But like it,
Right.
I think that's a testament to how timeless not even just like the music itself, but like your thought and creative process is. Like I always think that's worth pointing out.
Well, I mean, ass is relevant. I just want to be clear about that because I watch a lot of movie critique kind of things, and there's different folks who think movies are ass for shit that ain't got nothing to do with the film.
Right.
And it's politics of the film. They don't like that it's a all woman led cast. They don't like that it's a woman writer. But if you compare that shit to Star Wars, the original Star Wars is fucking garbage. As a film, you're like, yo, this shit is like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what's happening? Right? The rebels are actually the what do they call it? The Empire is actually the good guys. The rebels are
Yeah.
actually savers and the rapists and fucking bullies. But I think there's something to like, the process of things, why people critique things, why things are certain relevant, why things are certain relative, why people critique things in a certain way, why people look at things expecting certain things. Some people go on the albums listening for beats. And when they don't get the beats, they're like, oh, this shit's garbage, or
Yeah.
people go for the lyrics, beats are fire, but because they don't get the lyrics, they're like, oh, this shit is garbage. And I think there's some people that know how to do that balance, and there's some people that don't. At a certain point, you just got to kind of like, does your fan base enjoy it? And sometimes the fan base is just the first 3 Star Wars. They never left those 3 things, and that's what anything beyond that is just kind of like, I guess it's there, but I'm going back to watch the original. Like I'm going back to watch that first 3. And you got fans of the new shit who look at the old shit like, I can't even watch this, right? I think they're all dope, but I think it's like they're like, yo, I can't watch it. Like it's just either the cuts are too long or the graphics are just too fucking shitty compared to what I'm seeing, in fucking whatever the newest Star Wars is. So I apply some of those metrics to my own work and to the work of all my peers who work in the same space with me. I mean, it's different strokes for different folks. And I think there's something like the critic industry for what it was before, which was probably a promotional tool by the studios to actually promote films, versus then it became its own industry of people weaponizing it to bring down certain, political opponents or whatever you want, or social opponents, or push certain agendas and shit like that. Then it's not about the movie at all. It's really just about how much you appreciate your personal particular biases and how much you want the things that are produced to reflect that. And then part of your identity is actually shooting down anything that's in opposition to it. That's why you look at the internet or YouTube and it's full of motherfuckers critiquing shit that other people made. And those people, the only thing they made was the critique of the shit, critiquing other people's shit. So there's like a Pitchfork interview, like there's a Pitchfork did a review, and to each their own. And now I'm learning to talk about other interviews within other interviews to pit the interview other, even though you and the homie from Rolling Stone are homies. But the people at Pitchfork, it was like you read the review and the first 2 paragraphs are like about the movie Last Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, what the fuck does this have to do, with, because that particular reviewer captured one thing that captured his or her imagination. And then that was the reference point that they had. And then they're bringing in all this other shit from something else really to kind of push their particular views. And it can be read as like, well, Last Samurai was about some white people and going to Japan, and some cultural appropriation, colonial bullshit, like what the fuck is that? So it's things like that where people take work and try and apply their own, even if it's a critique, and apply their own kind of political, personal points of view to it. And you rarely ever get like just a pure, like just clear. I think you get it more now, kind of like the guys that do reaction videos. But I think it's a little bit clear and pure. But I think that kind of industrial standard of the critique or the dressing down of a work doesn't really hold that much weight, and it feels weird because I don't really even care about them shits. It's like now it used to be like, oh, they did, and then now it's kind of like whatever. Like, are the Twitter kids happy? I'm cool. Is the Reddit kids like cool? Whoever the fuck is this journalist that went to NYU to do whatever? Like whatever, homie. With all that said, I think there's something to appreciating things under its own terms and stop trying to categorize things, even though I think our Western sensibilities will disallow us from doing that. I it's a powerful thing to try and not constantly cross-reference the quality of something versus something else, because they're two different things. You know, they're meant for two different things. They're meant for two different audiences. Even me, I make work that's for a particular loop section of my audience. You know, it may not be for the general Lupe audience, you know, who knows me because of, you know, I've sold millions of records, not because of Janelle Forever, you know, not because of Samurai, not because of these lyrical things. It's like because of Battle Scars and Show Goes On and Superstar, big mass things. And yes, we'll cater to that audience, but at the same time too, there's also the fans who listen to the mixtapes, you know, who don't even fuck with the albums. They like, I'll fuck with this album because it's the closest I got to one of your mixtapes.
Yeah, no, there's gonna be some people who are like, oh yeah, I stopped listening after like a Rhyme Ape or some shit, you know, like
Yeah. And you see that in video games, you see that in film, you see that in
yeah,
sneakers, you see that in clothing, you see that in every kind of capacity. And I'm not complaining about it. I think it's just part of the creative process. And when you put yourself out there, you got to take responsibility for the shit that comes back. But I do think it's important to at least recognize that it's like on behalf on the one of the responsibilities on the consumption side is to just appreciate things in isolation, you know. And maybe that conceit of this is an Amy Winehouse portrait adds a little bit more context to the work. I still think it's something, just kind of appreciate it in its own capacity, as opposed to trying to compare it to, you know, this album that came out or an album within my own canon. But, you know, to each their own. Just a little.
I hear you. And it's funny you bring that all up. You like, as somebody who used to work at Pitchfork, and like I just left my job over there not too long ago. You know, like, this is something that, like, as a critic, like I think about the stuff you said all the time. You know, like I tried, you know, like I'm the type of person who's like, that's the reason a podcast like Real Notes exists, because like rap and film, like these shit saved my life, you know, like in like a very real like way. And like that's just kind of how like I see the world through those two lenses. And whenever I write about music or film or anything really, my brain can't help but look for, you know, like I'm just always about connecting nodes. You know, like obviously like recognizing that everything kind of works within its own culture and space and all of that, obviously. But like every once in a while, like I'll just be like, oh, like there's like either like a thematic or emotional or there's some sort of connection here. And sometimes you just can't help but make that connection. Like example, I reviewed the Killer Mike album when it came out, and I started it with a brief summary of the spook who sat by the door, because it's sampled and referenced on the album, and I felt like it was relevant to kind of bring that into context because of what the stuff Mike was talking about. But there are other times where I'll just be wanting to write about some shit, be like, this sounds dope. This is cool. This is cool. This is cool. You know, like I personally myself, like I personally try to, I just look at, like, I let the work talk to me. And if I start hearing things that come from other places, I follow those. But if I don't, then, you know, like there's value in both things. And I only try to do that when I think it's appropriate. But, you know, like you said, to each their own. And you know, it's honestly very I appreciate you saying all that, you know, because like once again, this is all stuff I think about pretty constantly. And like it's all about balance. It's all about, like, at the end of the day, it's about the music. You know, like there's so many other different contexts and so many other different things that can, like, are either appropriate or not appropriate to bring in, but like it's about the music at the end of the day. And I like to think that at my best, I'm at least like, because like another thing, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling right now. Another thing I think about a lot is how when music's being written about, like, producers don't get mentioned a lot of the time, you know, like unless they're like a big name, you know, like that's why it makes me so happy to hear you talk about Soundtrakk the way you do. And whenever I write, I try as often as I can So even if I can't like dig into like the intricacies of a beat or whatever, I at least try to mention names, because they're 50% of the equate, like it's once again, these are just all things I think about all the time, like as a writer, as like a relatively new podcaster, like this is all just hearing it from you, like hearing it from someone whose music I've been listening to for a while and someone who has all these experiences. Like, I'm sitting with this. I'm gonna be sitting with this in 2 hours. I'm gonna be sitting with it in like 2 days. Like this is, I just appreciate, like this is like, yeah, I appreciate this dialogue, yeah.
No, I mean, Rocco, it's always a challenge to how, as an artist, what are the things you got, and I think it's a service to artists on the come up, and even artists who are already came up and are, continuing on and maybe haven't adjusted themselves to that kind of thinking. Is like, even in that creative process, just create, for yourself, create for your own wants and goals, and needs. And hopefully as an artist, and this goes back to a question you said earlier about how I observe and my thought processes and stuff like that, and being able to emulate certain things and tell certain stories in certain ways. I mean, all you gotta do is just, give yourself an opportunity to live normally as an artist,
Yeah.
and experience the world in a normal way. And you can always imagine, your brain's gonna imagine and add unicorns and fucking dragons to shit, but underneath all of that has to kind of have a tone of normality. And if you can capture that and speak to normal things and basic things and the minutia, like you said, and things like Bigfoot, that's enough. That's enough to kind of carry you over the threshold, but then also gives you a certain level of grounding, and gives you a certain access to aspects of the human condition that don't require you to be a super duper lyrical expert or super duper, having to pull in all these different reference points and all these different things to kind of communicate your story. Maybe those reference points are to excite a certain moment. So for me, the inspiration for the entirety of Samurai was that one line from Amy. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was allowing myself to just sit and watch this story about
Right.
somebody, that one moment, and then taking that one moment very seriously, and then it organically turned into something else. But artists also need to know that whatever they put out into the world, there's going to be some response, there's going to be some reaction, and there's going to be, a certain level of, soft rebuttal, and hopefully over the years, as critics, you know, get a taste of their own medicine to a certain degree, or realize, like, even with what we would consider, like you said, trash with some of these films, that
Yeah.
there's a human being who really appreciated the work that they did on that film, and you look at that list of credits, and there's people who are really proud of the thing that they did. And for them to have to turn on YouTube and have some fucking dude, tell like that shit was garbage, and then they give them a
Yeah.
why that shit was this and that. I mean, you gotta kinda give people their round of applause, like that's it, hey, you did a thing, and that shit is dope. you know it wasn't like the dopest that it possibly could have been in certain capacities, but hey, go fuck yourself, like, you know
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
to do that shit that way. So anyway, just have a little bit of sensitivity to the holistic aspect of the projects that people do.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
No, I feel you. Yeah. That's like, once again, like that's, like there's a, like I personally never want to, like, I'm not trying to bully people, like when it comes to, like, most of the time I can't stand that in writing. Most of the time when people are just like, when you can just tell like this person is out to like bully this person, like I don't like that. Like that's obviously not what I'm trying to do. But it's once again, it's all about balance and, like you said, sensitivity. I think it is important to note that people do work hard on this stuff. And like just like everything, like we're all coming to this from our own perspective. Like like objectivity is a very, I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but it's a very difficult thing to really like grasp, because like things are, like it's not like, like I'm not the type of person who thinks, I'm not the type of person who thinks that things don't just exist without us, you know? Like this napkin exists without me being here to hold it. You know, like the headphones exist if they were over in the corner and I couldn't see them. You know, like your glasses exist if they're not there to like help you see. You know, like things are, and there are qualities that make them be, you know? And I try, like, there are things that we're not always going to be able to see because we're coming at it from like, I only see this as a napkin. What else could it be? Like maybe I'm kind of going off the rails, but
I mean,
yeah,
that's the job of an artist, to take those kind of mundane things and
yeah,
apply optimal reference point, optimal kind of ambiguity, or focusing on the ambiguity, or adding layers to it, or breathing life into a thing to give it a purpose beyond its just utility, which in itself is a whole nother kind of ikigai level of things. But anyway, I think that's some of the roles of an artist, you know, is to take those things that we kind of take for granted, take the things that we don't really look at as being special, or don't see a function in them beyond this most basic thing, and then we kind of cast it aside. Cast, pun intended, is the drug to activate those things, and everybody that's in that chain to bring that thing to life, you know, is a part of that kind of tradition, to get you to look at the world in a different way, in a more nuanced way, in a more subtle way. And then the hope would be that you're able to apply those things, even if it's something as Star Wars, or something as, you know, whatever. I keep coming back to Star Wars because it seems like the most divisive community in terms of new versus old.
yeah.
Um,
It's a good call.
and I bring that up because it's like, yo, Samurai is old. You know, like it's old. Like it's old. It's part of the old canon, if you want to put it like that.
Right.
But like, you know, I think that's again, that's the role of the artist and everybody that's in that chain, to bring it to life, and to bring it all the way full circle and get back off of that shit and get back to I guess start landing this plane, is, you know, I have my team back, you know, so I have Chills back in play. You know, Soundtrakk didn't die from COVID during the pandemic, you know, so he's here. He's been able to build his production team, Open Session, where a lot of the guys are responsible for those little pieces of production and elevating. You know, and we're back producing and creating, in a way where that list of credits of everybody who's behind this, you know, for me is like, yeah, you're not gonna just haphazardly kind of dismiss the work of my family at this point, you know, like the whole. And I think that the work reflects that. So I think if you have your team engaged and everybody's invigorated and excited, and operating at their optimal, not their best, but their optimal levels, that you'll get things like Samurai, you know. And I hope that that tradition kind of continues, where you'll get more quality work, from this side from First and 15th, you know, from here forward, as opposed to just kind of being a one-off that we're celebrating now, but everybody's like, yeah, but it's not going to be as good as the next one, you know, because, you know, it's always the dip. And it's like, nah, like hopefully we're able to keep up the momentum and give you great work.
Right. Well, I mean, like if this is, once again, if this is old and, you know, like y'all got even more coming, you know, like it's like it bodes well for the future. You know, like I'm really vibing with these two projects, this one in particular. And yeah, once again, you know, just like, well, I'll save that for the end. Very last question for you, Lupe. If your life was a movie, what would it be about?
Um, if my life was a movie, that's crazy. Uh, I mean, my life is a movie, you know. I think my life is a fucking movie. Like, some people say that, and it's like hyperbolic. Third time I use hyperbolic in this interview. Um, but I think if you step back and there's like, you just look at the thing that I've won, many things that I've done, type shit. You're like, yo, look at all this
Yeah.
shit. It is a movie, and it's, you know, add my parents into it for the origin story. My dad's life is my dad's life is Star Wars. Like, it's like, oh, this dude is fucking an epic journey through the world. You throw my mom in there and it becomes a whole nother level. Put my family all in there. You put, you know, Chill and that whole experience and all my peoples, and, you know, my life is this big ass story. But I think it would be like, I don't want to prematurely reduce it to something. I mean, it'll be about bringing things back to life. You know, I think that's one of the functions of my work, and even Samurai, you know, is that it's taking things and breathing a new life into them. You know,
Right.
a new animation, in an interesting way, and completing the story, completing the loop, or whatever you want to call it. The Lupe part of Lupe is that, you know, like loop part, putting things in a certain continuum. And you know, if it's just that, fine, and you can reduce that down to just, you know, a documentary about teaching people how to do CPR. You know,
Right.
Fiasco story. It's like CPR. Like, okay, cool. You know.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, like you said, I really don't think it's hyperbolic for you to say that your life is a movie. Like I can't think of many people who almost signed to Jay-Z and beat Daigo in a Street Fighter tournament. Like, like that doesn't, you're it, bro. Like, you know, like you're it. So, you know, like just off of that, and you know, you're a college professor, you're a college professor on top of that. You've been practicing swords since you were a kid. Like there's, you know, like you know, like you had a whole crazy thing with a label, and now you're on your own, and you've commanded respect over the years and built this really
Hey,
solid.
hey, write the script, send it to us, and then we'll.
Hey, man. Like, see, this is what I'm talking about, bro. I'm seeing the dots. They're like in front of me on some Iron Man shit. I'm telling you, bro. Like this is what I do. So
So,
this is my art, you know, like
so
oh man.
I like it.
Lupe, yeah, just like as somebody who's been listening for 2 decades, and like thank you for your time, for your perspective, and I don't know, like this is like 13-year-old me is doing fucking backflips right now, like just like talking to you. So yeah, man, just thanks for the time and the perspective and the understanding, and this was such an incredible conversation. It means a lot to get the chance to just do this, you know, like I don't take that for granted. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate the time, and hopefully we put out a couple more projects in between now and then, and we can come back and have a even deeper conversation on the next pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm down for round 2 if you want to do it. So
Man.
yeah. Nah, man, thank you again.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Shout out to y'all for making it this far. And shout out to all the black people listening too, because y'all really impeccable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend to come through next time. 1.